Welcome to the Community Forum. My name is John Guglieltino. I'm your host. This evening we're going to be talking with the American Red Cross. It's been a while since they've been on the show, but they're always doing a great job out there. And there's some new faces here with me for the first time on Community Forum. Steve Woods, who's the chapter executive of Red Cross, along with volunteer Marianne Gaffney. Gaffney. She's the board member that's in charge of the volunteers, head volunteer for the local Red Cross. So we're going to be getting into what's new with the local Red Cross, and welcome to the show.
Great, thank you, John. Welcome.
You're welcome.
Thank you, John.
Okay, you're welcome. First of all, before we get into your questions, a little background on yourself aside from the Red Cross and how you came to the Red Cross in Danbury. You might want to say what your educational background, where you came from, and mention your family if you'd like.
Sure.
And
Marianne, do you want to start?
Okay, if you'd like to do it that way.
Marianne Gaffney. I'm from Brookfield, and do I have to say how old? I'm 53 years old. And I have two teenagers, 14 and 16, and we've been in Brookfield for about 10 years. And I started volunteering with the Red Cross with Hurricane Katrina.
Okay, very good. Steve?
And Steve Woods, I'm the executive director here for the Western Connecticut chapter of the Red Cross. I've been on the job since August this past year, but I'm a lifelong Red Crosser. I started my Red Cross career as a volunteer in New Canaan, where I was born and raised during the 1973 ice storm. And I've been a volunteer or an employee of the Red Cross ever since. I live here in Danbury. I've lived here for about 3 years.
Okay, very good. Okay, the Red Cross. What is the mission of the American Red Cross and Danbury Red Cross? The Danbury area Red Cross, I should say, because sometimes people think, well, that's the mission of one, but you also have your mission here.
Right. The national mission and the mission of the Western Connecticut Red Cross, which covers from Ridgefield, Reading, all the way up through New Milford, Sharon, and Salisbury. We cover the whole Western Connecticut strip. Our mission essentially is to help people prevent, prepare for, and respond to emergencies. Locally, our motto is Western Connecticut, keeping families safe and ready. So when you think of safety and being ready for disasters or family emergencies, we want you to think about the Red Cross and what services and programs we have to help everybody in the community be ready for anything.
Now the Red Cross, is it a local group? Do you have a local board of directors from the area towns? Roughly what size or what number of them are there?
The Red Cross is a voluntary-driven organization. We're driven and guided by our volunteer board of directors. We currently have 14 members on our board. We're expanding that shortly up to 20 members from local business members, business owners, retired folks from the Western Connecticut region sit on our board. And they're our governance committee. So there's currently 14 of them. And they help set direction and guidance for the chapter. My boss is a volunteer. I report to the board of directors who helps set the direction for the chapter.
All right, so you figure out what should the emphasis be? How many fires did we have? How many floods did we have? Should be our major emphasis for the coming year.
Right. We look at the services that we think are necessary in the community, both to help people prevent for emergencies, prepare for emergencies. We want to make sure people have first aid and CPR training in case there's a family medical emergency. We also have a very active medical transportation program that helps elderly and seniors get to doctor's appointments to help prevent any long-term illnesses from lack of health care. And we look at what big disasters could happen. We are susceptible to ice storms, tornadoes, and even hurricanes up in this area. And of course, flooding and single-family house fires, which is our largest type of disaster we respond to.
Every once in a while we have a snow-related cave-in.
We'll do, yep.
Yeah. I wanted to get these in now, but we'll probably revisit them later on. What is your website?
Our website is http://westernct.redcross.org.
Okay, and your local telephone number for whether it's somebody that's looking for information or just somebody who wants to volunteer. So it's 96% of your people are volunteers, right?
Right. Most of our services are provided by volunteers. The phone number to call us is area code 203-792-8200.
Okay. Now, the Red Cross recommends everybody take 3 simple actions to get ready for a variety of disasters. These items on the table have to do with that, right? These are the kits that...
These are the kits. We have three steps for everybody should take to get ready. One is to build a kit, make a plan, and stay informed. So build a kit you can either purchase one of the ready-made kits that we have for sale at the Red Cross.
Yeah, we can't get into pricing at all.
Right. Or you can take the same content list and go to the store and buy the items yourself. Either way, either buy one or make one yourself, but everyone needs a kit with things like flashlight, water,
you have water in
batteries, medications, it's a flashlight,
right.
Gloves, work gloves, and then a basic first aid kit. Everybody should have a basic first aid kit in case they get hurt.
There's bandages, and there's...
bandages, scissors, Band-Aids, instruction booklet. So everyone should have a kit. And also everyone should have a plan for what to do. What would happen if you couldn't go home tonight because your road was blocked off because of a disaster, or there was a gas leak in your neighborhood and you had to leave suddenly? Where would you go, and how would you notify your family that you've had to evacuate? So you need a plan of what to do. And then also stay informed. Listen to the radio, have the weather report on the regular when you see or hear storms that are coming. Monitor the weather so that you're not caught off guard ahead of time.
Do you recommend for those that may have a few extra dollars one of those emergency radios?
Emergency radios are excellent items to have. You can get the hand crank ones so that you don't even need electricity. You can crank it by the crank on the side will
Yeah, I've seen
activate
those.
it.
Yeah.
Very good. Red Cross, obviously, we sell them as a preparedness item. You can also get weather radios that will come on automatically when there's a weather alert in the area to tell you to take cover for a possible tornado or severe weather.
Okay. Let's see here. We covered that. What type of disasters are more likely to happen in Connecticut? So we covered some of that, but we have a lot more tornadoes and snowstorm-related things as opposed to, what did I say, tornadoes? Hurricanes is what I meant to say, as
Right.
opposed to tornadoes, which are in the south. So you have your instructions and your training a little bit more into that area, or you cover all the disasters in equal training?
Some of the disaster kits you get will be good for any type of disaster. The largest disaster, most common disaster in this area is house fires.
Oh, really?
Red Cross, we respond to about 2 or 3 house fires a month. Families who have had a house or apartment fire who've now become homeless as a result of that. So that's our most common type of disaster here locally. I said we go out to about 2 of those a month in the area. The next largest threat in this area is flooding from a severe rain event. We get that often with some of the streams and rivers that will flood out neighborhoods or access roads to get into neighborhoods. So that's the second most common type of disaster that we have here. And of course we are susceptible to tornadoes. One touched down in Ridgefield last year. And then in the winter months there's ice storms and power failures that comes with that. So we actually have a lot of types of disasters that happen in this
Now that
area.
you mention it, we are getting a little more in the way of tornadoes than we ever did in the past.
Yeah.
You know, there was one in New York that came over into just south of Ridgefield.
Yep, up in the Westchester
I
County
missed the
area.
one about the touchdown.
They don't have to be very big. They can be very small. And they can also just be microbursts, which are a type of wind action that will do almost as much damage as a tornado. If you're to blow down trees, block roads, take out power, which can disrupt your water pump, which means you have no water, can take out electricity so the stores aren't open. So by having a disaster supply kit so that you're prepared and ready for at least 3 days, we say 3 to 5 days on your own without having to go shopping. And it also helps, what I like to say, it takes the inconvenience out of a disaster. If you know that for the first 3 to 5 days you're okay at home without having to go shopping, then you won't have to stand in long lines at gas stations or at the store like everybody else. You can be resting at home comfortably until utilities are turned back on or other assistance is made available.
Now, what kind of training do volunteers, you go similar training that the staffers in all these aspects
Well, it depends on what type of volunteer you want to be. We do have many different types of volunteers at the chapter. We have people who do computer work and staff work and answer phones and drive people to appointments and help with special events. And then we have disaster volunteers. The disaster volunteers obviously take a lot more training than anybody else. There are several basic courses to learn about how the Red Cross responds to disasters, and then once you reach a certain level you decide upon your specialty and you get additional training depending upon what you might be doing in a disaster. In small disasters somebody does everything. The larger the disaster, the more specialized your position might be responding as a volunteer.
I sort of thought that there was like everybody knew everybody else's job to some extent, but I guess when you're getting into more specific problems like a tornado, I guess you've got, someone's got to be in charge of triage or whatever.
Well, you're right, but
Yeah.
you're right for the small, like a house fire.
Yeah.
You do really need to know if you're going to respond to a house fire with the Red Cross as a volunteer, you need to know how to do all of it. You need to know how to do everything, yes. And so there's a lot of training to be done. The disaster volunteers get a lot of training from the Red Cross.
So people that are out there saying, geez, there's not a heck of a lot to do, they can always become a Red Cross volunteer and get into disaster training, and they'll be going to school. How much schooling on average does it take to have a general knowledge? Just, I mean, someone here can learn Comcast cable training in a couple of weeks, the basic training. Would you say basic training is about a month, or?
Well, if you did it all at one, I think it's probably 20 or 30 hours, would you say, Steve? 20 or 30 hours of classes for basic
The basic training.
Yes.
And when you come out of those classes, a disaster volunteer will be able to work with families individually on a case-by-case basis to help meet their emergency needs. That client casework class is 6 hours long, usually taught on a Saturday or 2 evening classes. We also have our introductory courses, and that's another 3-hour course that helps give you the overview of what Red Cross does. And then we have other specialty workshops in disaster assessment, how to run a shelter, and how to feed people in disaster. So in order to be fully trained for the first level of response, it's about 20 hours of time, spread over several months, though, of time, and mostly nights and weekends. And of course, all our disaster training for volunteers is free.
Okay. What is the the Safe and Well site on the Red Cross website?
Safe and Well is a new program that we've started in the last couple of years, mostly after Katrina, when in big disasters, people didn't know how to get a hold of family members. They didn't know where they were, they couldn't reach them, the phones were down. So nationally, we have this new Safe and Well website that if you go onto our national website, www.redcross.org, if you are in the middle of a disaster, you're a victim of a disaster, a hurricane or a tornado, anywhere in the country, you have access to that website. You can register yourself to say, I am safe and well. And then you tell all your family members if they need to know about you, then they can check that website and find out how you're doing.
So if you're in Florida and something happens, you can go on, put your name there that
Right.
I'm over here, the telephones aren't working, but
Right. But I'm safe and well. And so your family here in the New England area can also log onto that website and find out that you've registered to say, I've been evacuated, I'm safe and well, I'm staying at a Red Cross shelter, or I'm staying with friends and relatives. So it's a very canned, standard information, but it helps connect families after big disasters.
Because a lot of people forget that the landline poles are going to be down, and so are the cell towers.
Yep.
So cells won't be working in an area either if you got let's say a hurricane went through an area like in Florida. So it's a good idea.
And we tell people before they evacuate, if you're in an area that's going to be evacuated, make one phone call, call a family relative out of the area. You can even have that family member put you in the Safe and Well website themselves for you while you're evacuating.
That's a good idea. How can individuals or organizations get trained in, well, yeah, we covered that, CPR, but there might be something specific you meant, in CPR, first aid, and other courses of that, I guess, that nature.
Right.
You have specific courses on those particular...
Right. In addition to having disaster preparedness training, we recommend everybody and every family have at least one family member who's trained in first aid. What do you do if someone falls down and breaks their ankle, breaks a leg, cuts themselves? So you need to know, not only have a first aid kit, but also be trained to use the bandages that are in that. So we recommend everybody have at least one family member trained in first aid, or CPR in case you have somebody who has a heart attack or is choking or has a medical emergency. So we recommend those 2 courses, and every business in the community should also have a first aid kit for their employees and also for their customers in case someone
How many
gets hurt.
people should have training in CPR on average? Let's say you got a firm with 10 people. Would you say there should be 3 people that have training there, or as many people as you can get training?
Well, we'd like this Red Cross, like to see everybody have first aid and CPR training.
Okay.
If you have 10 employees, how many employees are going to be there at the moment that someone collapses with a heart attack? You don't know. So it's better to have more people trained, 3 or 4 per office, than it is to rely on that one person who might be out of the office.
That's what I was saying. There's got to be something at 3 or 4 you should be able to
should
cover.
be a good backup.
Yeah. Okay. Now, in the area of volunteering, there's a certain amount of volunteering with the elderly also, right? I sort of remember that from previous years, and I'm looking to see if that there's a retired senior volunteer program.
Yes.
That's like a specialty area, and do they drive people? In the past, that's what they used to do. People that needed to go to the doctors, or is that still being done? Or
Well, the Wheels program, where we drive people to doctor's appointments, is part of the Red Cross.
Okay.
And some of those people do come through the Retired Senior Volunteer Program, which is a separate program that's
okay.
housed in our office for senior volunteers, which they define as 55 or older, which is looking younger and younger to me.
well, they're saying the 50s are now the new 40s, so maybe you have to move that up by 10
Okay,
years.
there we go.
That's the new 40s.
There you go.
Okay.
And that program is a clearinghouse pretty much for volunteers who are then spread out. Is it about 80 programs?
About 82 different agencies that a senior volunteer can come in through us and say, I'd like to volunteer, I don't know what I want to do, but I'm now retired, I have time on my hands, I'd like to give back to the community, what can I do? And through our Retired Senior Volunteer Program, we have 82 different agencies throughout the 8-town area that program covers. Everything from literacy programs to the library to the shelter, homeless shelters, that we basically give new volunteers a whole menu of where you'd like to fit in. In addition, the Red Cross is also one of their stations, so they can come and be a driver for our medical program. They can work on computers for our office. So there's a lot of different ways a senior individual can volunteer for the community through the Red Cross.
What is the national? There's a national week of. We were just talking about CPR, and I didn't get to this. CPR and AED week.
Awareness Week. Yep.
Yeah.
It's coming up June 1st through 7th.
Okay.
It's the first year the national, federally mandated Awareness Week because of the importance to have everyone trained in first aid and AED, which is an automatic external defibrillator. That's the pads they put on someone's chest when they have a heart attack. It will automatically give a shock to help restart the heart. That's an AED. And there's an Awareness Week coming up June 1st through 7th, and the Red Cross, along with other agencies, will be promoting that families should get trained in first aid and CPR.
I've seen these units around, like in gyms and some other facilities.
Right.
I think they were distributed to gyms in the area, but but you got to know how to use them.
Got to know how to use them, got to take
Yeah.
the class. Red
Yeah.
Cross, obviously, we offer that class, but they are a lifesaver. It's amazing the number of people who are saved by these machines that can provide that electric shock when necessary.
The heart stops for whatever reason.
Whatever reason, and this machine will help restart the heart in many cases, and of course the training. So we're having this big public awareness push coming up in June to get families aware of it and to take some special training.
Okay. What are some of your most memorable experiences as a volunteer? I mean, that's we have that down there. Did you have? I mean, I'm sure you got involved in doing what you're doing because you had something that they provided the spark, so to speak. So, do you have any stories you could tell or a story that
Or
you
a
could tell.
story?
Yeah.
Well, probably, I think most people, their first volunteer experience is the one that's the most exciting or rewarding. And for me, that's certainly the case, because I did volunteer during Katrina. And that was the first time I had thought about doing something like the Red Cross. I think a lot of people at that time were trying to figure out what they could do to help. And I was deployed by the Red Cross to Hurricane Rita, which happened right after Katrina. And I went down to Texas to work in a shelter, and then ended up joining what was called a strike team, and went out with a small group of trucks and a bunch of people that just drove down into areas that had been hit by the by Hurricane Rita, where the eye went through eastern Texas. And we just had food and water on the back of our trucks, and we would stop on the side of the road and open the back of the truck and hand out water and food. We were there immediately the day after the storm. So it was quite an experience. We lived on the trucks for a few days, and I made some wonderful friends and really became a convert to what the Red Cross can do. I mean, I was in a situation where sometimes I was the first Red Cross person somebody had seen after the disaster, even though it was 3 or 4 or 5 days later. And one day I got out of a truck to ask a lady if we could bring her hot meals that evening for her town and her area. She was standing in front of a school, and she just started crying and hugging me and saying, "God bless you, God bless you." Well, that's not an experience that you walk away from very easily. And since then, I've had lots of different experiences. One of the great things about volunteering for the Red Cross is you can do so many different things, and you can change what you're doing as your circumstances in your life change, or what's happening at the Red Cross changes. I respond to local disasters. I've been a disaster volunteer. I work in the volunteer office. I've joined the board. And Steve knows I'm going to have to talk about, I went to the San Diego wildfires this year and got to learn how to drive a forklift. So not
Wow.
something I ever thought that I would do.
You never thought you'd do that, but
No, I didn't.
so you can put a fork in it now.
Yes,
And lift it.
yes. Or my husband says I can clean my children's rooms.
Okay, that's interesting. If someone is in a senior center, so to speak, in Danbury, or a senior home, and doesn't have a car but wants to volunteer, would somebody pick them up? I'm sure there's a number of people that are viewing us that are in that situation. Do you have a way of getting and picking people up and bringing them down to do work? If they need, so you know, you're in Danbury, and I'm
Sure.
talking specifically for Danbury, but I'm sure that there's other
Right.
territories, the same situation, like in New Milford, which is another higher density municipality.
Right. We have actually not had that request come to us for someone to give a ride. We probably could. I don't know. We haven't had to in the past. We do have a medical transportation program that makes sure that seniors get to their appointments on time. And I know that with our retired senior volunteer program, we do have some homebound elderly that do some projects at home, some knitting. So there is ways to volunteer actually without even leaving your house to our knitting, to the knitting and crocheting programs that we have. But if somebody really wanted to volunteer and we had a position for them,
and they're sitting, they might be on Main Street, and it's a little, they don't mind if they can get to your place and,
Right.
and help you do stuff,
we'd be happy,
mailings
we'd be happy
or
to talk
whatever.
and see what we can do, what we might be able to arrange.
I happen to know a few people in town, and so I'm thinking what exists here could also exist in New Milford,
Sure.
or exist in Richfield, or Bethel for that
Right.
matter. Yeah. Okay. Again, what is your website and your telephone number for people watching, so we can repeat it at this point?
Website is http://westernct.redcross.org. And we also have another Connecticut website, which is ctredcross.org. And our phone number is area code 203-792-8200. And that's both for volunteer, and it's also our emergency number. That's manned and 24 hours a day for folks who need to report disasters, fires, or need assistance from the Red Cross.
Now, we have a few minutes left. Is there some type of things you want to emphasize in the last couple of minutes that we have left, and the same Mary Ann, in your case. Any particular volunteers you're in the greatest need? Maybe you want to start off, you really need a few more volunteers in disaster. You could use 10 more or whatever. You want to make a special appeal at this point?
Well, we always need people to help with blood drives. That's a big need for us, because even though we have a lot of different blood drive volunteers, a drive happens on a certain day, so you need to be able to volunteer on that day. So we're always looking for people who are willing to do that, and actually that's one of the easiest things to volunteer for, because there's relatively little training.
Yeah, I was going to say, let's clarify. The people you're looking for, they're not going to be pulling the blood out.
No, no.
There might be people thinking, I don't want to be involved in taking blood. I might faint.
No, we need people to check people in at the door and hand out cookies and walk people from the table to the cookies. And have the smile.
So that blood pressure isn't going up 20 points while they're walking to where they take the blood.
Exactly. And that's a very rewarding volunteer opportunity. And again, you don't have to have the extensive training that you would need to be a disaster volunteer, to be a blood drive volunteer. We also have a number of special events that happen during the year that we do fundraising events, and we're always looking for people that would be willing to help us on those. Those are our biggest needs right now.
Yeah, so you have a bank. If somebody calls you, I want either the telephone number or goes on your website, and they volunteer, you put them into a bank, and then you call them at the appropriate time.
Exactly,
right.
yes.
So they just got to give basic information, a name, telephone number, or whatever address, so they get on your mailing list. And that's good.
Yeah,
and we got a minute left.
Sure. Well, I just wanted to stress the fact that we are the American Red Cross of Western Connecticut. We're a local Red Cross chapter. We survive on voluntary contributions here for the local chapter, but also money donated here locally can stay locally, simply by earmarking it to say, I want to go to the Western Connecticut Red Cross. Or, right now, we're collecting money and donations for disasters all over the world.
We got Comcast rules, I want to say, before you say anything further.
But we're also, Red Cross is also on the scene in the China earthquake, and the Miramar tornadoes, and the cyclones. So we're part of a bigger family of Red Crosses, but we're also a local family. We've been here 100 years in Connecticut and in the Danbury area.
All right, well, I want to thank you for coming on the show, or waving to me to say bye-bye. So
great, John. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you, John.
You're
nice
welcome.
To meet you.
And I want to thank the viewers for tuning in to Community Forum. Tune in next week, same time, same station. I'm sure we'll have another interesting program. Good night for now, and we'll see you then.